Hi everyone, I am Jharna Sejwani, the Program Director for UG Law at IMS GSL. We are back with another exciting session of Ignite where we talk about different careers of law. Today, we're doing a conversation about taxation law with none other than Professor Sohini Shrivastav. Professor Sohini is currently the HoD Law of HSNC University, which has recently launched the DM Harish School of Law in Mumbai at Worli. Prior to this, she was the Associate Dean of NMIMS Kirit P. Mehta School of Law and has pursued her graduation in 2010 from Gujarat National Law University. After this, she joined a law firm called DM Harish & Co., where she worked for 7.5 years. Her practice areas were majorly corporate laws, FEMA, real estate laws, and income tax advisory work. She has been involved in multiple private equity and real estate transactions during the time of 2012 to 2013. Thereafter, she joined academics. During this time, she has presented her ongoing research twice at Oxford Women's Leadership Symposium and has presented various papers in national and international conferences, written book chapters, etc. She has also won the Best Faculty Award in the year 2017-18 and been the convener of various committees like the Moot Court Committee, Placement Committee, etc. Apart from donning the academic hat, she is also a cooking enthusiast and an avid reader. We welcome you, ma'am, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me over here.
Alright, so before we start talking about taxation law, it would be great if you could just give us a brief about your journey as a taxation lawyer and then the move to academics.
Okay, so I did my graduation from Gujarat National Law University, and in the fourth year, the paper of Principles of Taxation 1 was there. I distinctly remember, and I thoroughly enjoyed the paper for some reason. And at that point of time, I had no idea where life is going to take me in future. But it so happened that I immediately joined DM Harish & Company after graduation, which I think everybody knows is a very well-known firm in the domain of taxation. So while I was majorly doing real estate, corporate structuring and FEMA, etc., I was surrounded by tax lawyers, and I was always part of discussion, understanding how tax plays a major role in every corporate transaction. So that happened, and I always felt that there is just so much of enigma around taxation, but it is something that affects all of us. And then it so happened that after working at DM Harish for about 7.5 years, when I finally decided to move into academics, the first subject that I had to teach was taxation. So that is where I think the love affair started, and what I have continuously tried to do is develop a liking for taxation amongst the law students, considering I myself have faced that how a lot of people are generally averse to taxation as a concept and as a law.
Yes, absolutely. I think you've correctly pointed out that taxation is one very niche area of law, and most students, including me, were scared of it, and I think I'm till date scared of it. But I think this is a great way to help us understand what taxation law looks like. So, if you could just give a brief to us about what tax laws involve, what we've recently heard a lot about GST, and it's all in the news. So, if you could just give us a brief of what taxation law looks like.
For sure. So, if I have to simplify taxation for everyone here, especially for the students, so one thing is that tax is something that affects all of us. I honestly, personally feel tax as a subject should probably be taught in school, because we all need to pay our taxes. But if at a larger level, if we see, taxation can be divided into two types, which is direct taxation and indirect taxation. So direct taxation is what affects us directly, where we directly pay tax to the government, and indirect taxation is where it goes through a chain, which is at every step of, say, manufacturing and retailing and selling, we are paying taxes, which again ultimately goes to the government. So to put it in very simple terms, Income Tax Act is an example of direct taxes and GST is an example of indirect taxes. So under Income Tax Act, we are paying taxes directly to the government. Under GST, when I'm going and buying a packet of biscuit, I am paying the tax part of it to the shopkeeper, who is eventually the money is going to the government as taxes. So that's there in very simple terms, and the reason why I say that taxation is important and the entire the enigma around taxation is something that has to be removed is because tax affects all of us. Even I've seen like grown-ups, adults struggle with taxation, not understanding what to do with their returns, not understanding that every transaction that they enter into, especially like buying or selling a house, buying or selling shares, giving their house on rent, like regular day-to-day life transactions, involves an element of taxation. Taxation, I would say that direct taxation rather can again be subdivided into two types, which is taxation for individuals and taxation for doing business. That involves, your partnership firms, LLPs, companies, their taxation, etc.
Okay. All right, that's great, and that really clarifies the basics of taxation that most of our students would want to know. So, other than this, could you just throw some light on what is the taxation regime in our country? Because I have read a lot about, the GST Act coming into picture. There's like a lot of hue and cry around it. So, if you could just throw some light on the recent amendments in the country in terms of the laws and maybe some judgments or some opinions of the judiciary, so that would really help us.
All right. So see, again, taxation, my domain specifically is the Income Tax Act, which deals with the direct taxation part, like I said. Now, we all know that every year, there in the month of February, there is a concept of presentation of budget in the Parliament. And that is where the source of all tax-related changes actually is. So, because whatever changes we want to make in the fiscal policy of the country, which is again connected with the political situation, the economics, whether it's an election year or not, whether the country has gone through a certain change or not, for example, COVID years, etc. All of that impacts our fiscal policy. And when that impacts the fiscal policy, the government sort of plays around with the taxes to see whether, say, more exemptions can be given or some exemptions can be taken back, to ensure that that the tax amount that they receive is a certain sum. Now, why is that so important? Because again, in very simple terms, tax is a way for the government to make money. So they are the ones who are collecting money from us so that they can pay for the infrastructure and the development of the country, etc. So the government's coffers are filled when we dutifully pay our taxes on time. Now, every year, there are small changes which are brought about in the tax regime. Two very recent changes that have happened is that previously India only had one regime of taxation, which is now being called the old regime, where people would get deductions and exemptions while filing their tax returns. 2 years back, what a change that came in was that now there is going to be a new regime where people will pay lesser rates of taxes, but they will not get the exemptions and deductions. So in the old regime, the rates of taxes are higher, but you get those exemptions and deductions. And in the new regime, the rates of taxes are lower, but you don't get the exemptions and deductions. Now, what are these exemptions and deductions?
I think that is my question going on in my mind, that okay, there's like a lot of terminology around exemptions, deductions, but what is it as an individual that I would have to keep in mind while probably I'm filing my taxes or making some investments?
Yes. So exemptions and deductions are again like gentle nudges that the government is giving you to invest your money or to make spendings or expenditures in a certain manner, and for which you will get tax benefits. So your total tax liability at the end of the year will be lesser if you abide by those I would say those provisions which are there in the Income Tax Act. Now, by abiding, I mean that the government is actually telling you that if you invest your money in so and so XYZ things, then you will get a tax deduction. If you put in your money in XYZ things, then that amount of money will be considered exempt. For example, if I make a donation to the PM's charitable trust, the PM relief fund, etc., that will be considered as an exemption. Where, because I am making a charity towards the government, so that amount of money will not be considered as part of my total income and I don't have to pay taxes on it. So that's one. Deduction would be if I'm investing in, say, for example, an NPS, National Pension Scheme, or say tax saving mutual funds, where my money is locked for a certain sum of years, but I am investing for my future. So it is actually the government is thinking that it is pushing me towards protecting my own future. If you see it from that perspective. So if I do that, then I get certain amount of money as deductions. Okay, so that these are exemptions and deductions. For example, the government, these are incentives given by the government to utilize my money in certain ways so that my overall tax liability at the end of the year can be lesser. And tax system in India works on slab basis. I'm talking purely from individual point of view, which means that, for a lot of people, it's like they feel that, oh, we are in the 30% tax bracket. So is it like whatever I earn, 30% has to be paid in tax? No. So we have slabs where the first few lakhs will have a certain percentage tax. The next few lakhs that I earn will have another percentage. And that is how we do the calculation. So it's not a flat rate, it's progressive in nature. So that is from an individual's perspective, these are some recent changes. With respect to corporate taxation, I think everybody is aware of the Vodafone case which happened, and then how it eventually, the whole concept of retrospective amendment of taxation, it probably did not send out a good signal to the world, because if as a country we keep changing and in fact go in the past and keep changing our tax regime, then it sends out a wrong message to the investors. They would think twice before making investments, because they are investing on the basis of what the tax system is or what kind of taxes they need to pay today. Now imagine I am putting in money knowing that this much will be the tax, and then tomorrow the law changes and I am told to pay 2x. So that's sort of not fair. Right. So the whole Vodafone tax, it will take like a good 1 hour to explain the case, but net it's that it was a question of retrospective amendment, etc. Also, you mentioned about the judiciary. I must say that Indian judiciary, when it comes to taxation, is continuously playing the role of a balance between the revenue and the assessee. We can neither be pro-revenue all the time, which means that we cannot always take the side of the government, nor can we be pro-assessee all the time. We have to maintain that balance so that the interest of both the parties are protected at all times.
A great insight to the subject of taxation and how the judiciary responds or keeps a balance between the two parties that are involved. So now that we've spoken about the subject and what taxation looks like, it would be really helpful if you could guide our students as to what they should keep in mind when they're thinking of pursuing a career in taxation law, and where all can they probably read, or where all can they refer to, maybe websites, or maybe if there are certain internships that you can suggest for our students. So what do you think that would be?
Yes, so I think my first message to all future law students would be that please don't think tax as a complicated subject or a very difficult subject, not everybody understands, or that a lawyer has nothing to do with it. It's a CA's job. No, it's nothing like that. In fact, tax laws and tax legislations are one of the most, interpreted legislations in the country. I mean that even a comma or a small word like an and or an or plays a huge role in how the judgment ultimately is going to be, which plays a huge role on our finances, be it a company or an individual, right? Because it straight away, majority of the tax litigation is when I am receiving a tax demand notice and I'm challenging it because I feel the revenue has not understood why I have paid X as tax, and the revenue is asking me to pay something else, and I need to fight my case to say that what I have paid is correct, right? So that's a huge chunk of tax litigation, which is entirely interpretation. CA's role is of course there. It's a very crucial role in maintaining the accounts and everything, so that questions are not raised in future as to how I do my dealings. But there is equal amount of space there for tax lawyers to grow, to interpret, and being a niche area even now, there is always a vacuum there for good tax lawyers to grow and evolve. Not a lot of law firms also practice tax. There are very few, but all law firms are slowly and gradually understanding the need to have a specific team looking at tax, especially when they are doing structuring work for corporates. So it is an area which is ever growing and it's not going anywhere. It's always going to be there. So that's one thing for the law students. And when it comes to reading and all, I think starting with very simple things rather than being interested in don't start your journey towards understanding taxation by first studying transfer pricing. That's not the right approach. First start by understanding what are the various sources of tax, the 5 heads of income. These are the simplest things, or rather even something more basic, understanding what is a previous year, an assessment year, a financial year, understanding that. So start with the basics. Those are simple things. See if you are enjoying it, and then go ahead and develop more understanding of it by reading more about it. There are a lot of articles available online. There are simplified books available online, and but the most important thing is that understand and clear your fundamentals first.
Absolutely. Also, if you could just tell us, like you were talking about, there are very few law firms who do practice in taxation law. So if you could just give some names where students can probably apply for internships or go out there.
Yes, for sure. So one is, like I mentioned, GM Harish and Company. They have a thriving tax practice. Nishit Desai Associates have tax practice. Khaitan has a tax practice. So these are top 3 names that comes to my mind. Of course, the big 4 like ENY and Deloitte and KPMG, they do a lot of tax advisory work. They also do the international tax advisory work. Plus, they help with indirect taxes also. So there also one can go ahead and apply for internships. Also, I feel that it is important, take one step back. It is important to go to the right law school and figure out that what kind of role tax plays in the course structure. Because this, I'm speaking from personal experience. What is happening today is that because there is such negative, I wouldn't say negativity honestly, I would say that there is such kind of lack of awareness around taxation. So there is also a lack of having good tax practitioners or those who understand tax, who can teach tax to students. So not a lot of law schools play or put that kind of focus on tax laws. in their course structure also. So if you choose a law school which does, or if you go to a law school which pays good amount of focus on tax laws, and not just the Income Tax Act, even GST, international taxation, have those kind of subjects, then you can actually grow with it. So
so I think you've mentioned a very important point. When it comes to a career of a law student, I think choosing the best law school, or not maybe best, but the one that fits right in terms of the kind of career that you want to pursue, I think is very important. So let's begin a conversation around that, what are these law schools that offer taxation as a specialization, as a course, as a subject, whatever we call it, and what is the way to get into these law schools? So if you could just tell us something.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. So like I said that I have recently joined HSNC University, and it has very recently launched the DM Harish School of Law. And if the name of the School of Law is DM Harish School of Law, who is considered a luminary in the field of taxation, it is only fair to assume that it will be given, tax will be given its due respect in the course structure. And we do have that in our curriculum. In fact, we spent a lot of time in developing the course structure, in understanding that the students, the law students who are coming in today, we are going to graduate 5 years from now. So it is imperative for every law school to work on their course structure in a manner where the students who are graduating in 2026 are fit for the practice in 2026. So we have to look at futuristic law schools. We have to see law schools which are putting in subjects like, for example, we are right now thinking of bringing in a subject of how the laws will be applicable in metaverse.
Oh, that's very interesting.
We have put in subjects like how the personality rights are going to get evolved. We have putting in subjects of the gaming industry and IPR, international taxation in business, because these are things which will be necessary 5 years from now. They are necessary even today, but they will be part of your daily practice 5 years from now. So it is important, and these, I think, more than anything else, two things the law students must look into when they're choosing a law school for themselves. One is the location. So Mumbai being the hub of all law firms, and the law school that I'm coming from, I'm representing, being in Worli, which is literally hop, skip and jump from the law firm district, which is Lower Parel in Mumbai. And the fact that the course curriculum and the course structure is so rich. It's not traditional, it's futuristic, it is thinking about what you need to know 5 years from now. So if those two things are taken into account, then that helps the student choose the right law school. Coming to how to get into it, we being a new law school, so we are taking students who have appeared for CLAT, who have appeared for LSAT, who are appearing for Maharashtra CET. Plus, we are having our own entrance exam called the HLAT, which is going to start. So it's a cycle. We'll keep on having it. We'll have 2-3 cycles of it. So which is probably going to start from mid-May sometime. So we will take students through that as well.
Alright, so I think we've learned a very interesting thing, that HSNC University has launched the DM Harish School of Law in the heart of the Mumbai city, and I think it's going to be a very enriching experience for students in Maharashtra as well as across the country who want to pursue interesting subjects like taxation law, like laws in metaverse and different personality rights and things like that. So I think it's a great opportunity for students, and as you all know that these are different exams like CLAT, LSAT, MH-CET, which help students get through various law schools, and of course being in Maharashtra, MH-CET becomes like an important paper. So I think that's one thing that students should definitely keep in mind while applying or giving their exam this year. Alright, so moving forward, you spoke about international practice. So if you could just tell us that if a student wants to go ahead and pursue some practice outside of India, or what probably the difference is there in terms of laws in India and outside. So if you could just tell us something.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing is that we can take it forward in two ways. One, we do our graduation in India, and then we go look for an LLM in international taxation.
Right.
So a lot of colleges in US and UK and even in Singapore, they
Right.
offer LLM where one of the subjects is international taxation, or you can come up with a bouquet of courses
Right.
with the focus on international taxation, etc. Now, one thing is that taxation is a country specific law. Not two countries will have the same tax laws, right? So, because every country has the right to decide how they want to tax their citizens. So, when it comes to international practice, then while having an WorkX in India definitely helps, but you also need to know the laws of that country, especially the tax laws of that country, to practice well. And so, in that regard also, if you do an LLM outside India and then get an internship followed by a traineeship followed by a job outside India, you learn the tax laws of that country. But one thing I wanted to add here, that every cross-border transaction, be it M&A, be it P transactions, etc., which are happening between India and other countries, tax plays a major role for both the parties. The one who is investing and the company which is there in India. So tax lawyers on both sides also play a major role, because they have to understand the nitty-gritties of it, the intricacies, how best to structure to pay the least amount of taxes, not just in one country but both the countries. So the beauty of international taxation is just that, where two countries have two different set of laws, but whether through bilateral agreements or double taxation avoidance agreements, through the transfer pricing regulations, we come up with a solution where you pay the least amount of taxes in both the countries and yet be on the right side of law. So
Okay, I think that's great. And for students who are wanting to pursue international taxation, I think LLM is a great option, and all of you can do more research of what these different colleges are, who provide these bouquet of different courses where taxation is an important subject. Alright, so I think with this we've come to an end and we would like to conclude the session. But if you have any last minute tips for students who are wanting to pursue law as a career or taxation as a career, or are in their law school and want to know more about this field of law, what would you suggest or message?
So for those who are aspiring to be lawyers, I must say that please don't waste a minute anymore and just take the decision and plunge in right now, because law is beautiful. To study a subject which is so dynamic, where every sub-subject, like for example law is a set, under that there are so many subsets. We have corporate law, constitutional law, criminal laws, civil laws, property laws, all of them are so beautiful. It only evolves how we interpret, how to take the society forward, how draft laws, how to interpret laws, how to help the society, how to help the judiciary in helping the society, how to provide justice. And it helps you think, it helps you ask questions, it helps you be aware of your rights. And these days it is a myth that if you become a law student, your only options in life would be to do litigation or maybe work in a law firm. That's not the case anymore. We see so many other career avenues opening. We see students who are joining think tanks, policy firms, or advisory bodies, who are joining the government, because government is in constant need of lawyers to draft in the legislature. Then we see people going abroad who are working. So many students are getting into academics. So many students are getting into judiciary, which is such a welcome sign. So many students are joining even, in future joining civil services with a law background. That helps immensely, because ultimately that is what you are supposed to do in your first and second postings. So it is, law as a career option is growing, is booming. It has so many options. It's also one of the most well-paying professions. Yes. So it is the right choice. It considering the population that India has, there is absolutely crazy demand for good lawyers. So please pursue law, do well, and if you want to go ahead with taxation laws as your interest areas, then I would suggest that you align your internships in law school accordingly. You can probably take up tax-related moot courts. You can probably present papers in tax related domain in conferences, so that your CV is aligned according to your interest area, because that makes an immediate impact on recruiters. And even when you go abroad or wherever for your future academic growth, it immediately shows that you had a focus area, you always wanted to do tax, so you pursued it from the very beginning of your law school journey.
Yes. Alright, so with this we come to an end of a very enriching session with Professor Sohini, and thank you so much for sparing your time and joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me over, and I hope I get to see a lot of students pursuing taxation in future.
Right, absolutely. Thank you. And with this, we come to end of another exciting session of Ignite. And if you want to know more about different career opportunities and what you can do after your law school, please keep following us and subscribe to our IMS-GSL channel on YouTube. You can also follow our Instagram page IMS-GSL, and you will have much more information. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a nice day. Bye.